A White House spokesman said the president was not aware when he was vice president that his son was reaching out to the U.S. Embassy in Italy on behalf of Burisma. Okay, the president's son is like contacting the official U.S. government? What? Eric Sherwin said, Burisma is hoping that some of its executives can get a meeting with the president to discuss their geothermal business in Tuscany. Wow! Burisma is hoping they can get a meeting with the president, which would have been, at that time, Obama, right? While Mr. Biden's letter to the ambassador is referred to in the correspondence, the Times was unable to review its contents because the State Department appears to have redacted in its entirety. Wow. What a joke of a government. Hunter Biden getting backstabbed by the very government that enabled all of his criminality for years. Now that his daddy is not going to be running anymore, things are not looking good for him. The State Department dropping all sorts of documents saying that Hunty Poo has actually been in a lot of problematic affairs, to say the least. Here's what the New York Times is reporting. And the New York Times, as we know, get leaks from the deep state apparatus all the time. So why is this being published now? Very curious questions. This came from Kenneth Vogel. He says, Hunter Biden, sought assistance from the U.S. government for a lucrative energy project in Italy, while his father was vice president, according to newly released records and interviews. Where these records come from all of a sudden? The records, which Biden administration had withheld for years, indicate that Hunter wrote at least one letter to the U.S. ambassador to Italy in 2016 seeking assistance for the Ukrainian gas company called Burisma, where he was a board member getting paid $1 million. Embassy officials appear to have been uneasy with the request from the son of the sitting vice president on behalf of a foreign company. Uh-oh. I want to be careful about promising too much, Hunter, wrote a Commerce Department official based in the embassy in Rome. He says, this is a Ukrainian company and purely to protect ourselves, okay, the U.S. government should not be actively advocating with the government of Italy without the company going through the DOC Advocacy Center, the official wrote. Those acronyms refer to the U.S. government and the Department of Commerce program that supports American companies that seek businesses with foreign governments. Now, Abby Lowell, Hunter's lawyer, said his client asked various people, including Ambassador to Italy at the time, John R. Phillips, whether they could arrange an introduction between Burisma and the president of Tuscany in the region. No meeting occurred, no project ever started, and so everything was proper, says the lawyer. Now, the State Department did not release the actual text of the letter. Why would they? A White House spokesman said the president was not aware when he was vice president that his son was reaching out to the U.S. Embassy in Italy on behalf of Burisma. Okay, the president's son is like contacting the official U.S. government? What? The department's release of documents to the New York Times, why are they dropping them now, came shortly after Biden dropped out. Weird. And his son prepares to stand trial. So they kept all these documents. If Joe Biden was still running, these documents would clearly continue on in the dark. Hunter Biden has not been charged with violating FARA, which requires people to disclose when they lobby the U.S. government on behalf of foreign interests, like when Hunter is lobbying the U.S. Embassy on behalf of a Ukrainian company. In the court filing last week that we've talked about, it was perceived as pressure. Prosecutors indicated that they do not intend to add a FARA charge, but noted that they had evidence that he did reach out to the State Department on behalf of a foreign client, another real estate magnate facing charges of corruption in Romania. Biden did not register under FARA as a lobbyist either for that. No charges for him. His outreach to the embassy in Rome on behalf of Burisma, so again, private company, which is kind of, the state energy company, he was acting on behalf of them, reaching out to the U.S. government, had not been previously reported, echoes other episodes for which he's been criticized for leveraging his daddy's clout to gain advantages in his foreign business. The embassy outreach was revealed in emails released by the State Department to the New York Times in response to a request for info. One of the officials named in the request had worked for the State Department in Italy before being assigned in Romania. Now, the request was initially filed under a FOIA request. After nearly 8 months, the State Department had not released any records, and so the Times sued. About 18 months later, the department moved to close the case after releasing thousands of pages of records, but none of which shed any light on Biden's outreach to the government. So they do a dump. Then the Times said, no, we know there's something here, noting that the department had failed to produce responsive records contained in another cache of files connected to a laptop that Hunter had abandoned in the Delaware shop. Now, the department resumed the search. They said, we got emails. Like, we know that this was communicated somehow. Show us the other half, which is good reporting. I mean, it's good digging if they actually did this. I have my doubts. It's probably the CIA's like, hey, look at this. But But the department resumed the search and periodic productions, but had produced few documents related to Biden, right? Then, after Biden leaves, documents come out until the week after his father ended his re-election campaign. All of a sudden, they're like, oh yeah, there's that one drawer. A State Department spokeswoman suggested that the timing was just coincidental, noting that the department had released batches of documents in each of the last 3 months. A person familiar with the timing said the release of the Italy documents was already planned for weeks before he was going to drop out. You're right. State Department is notoriously slow in processing these things. Their productions are overseen by a growing team of public servants, not political appointees, all making it so that this was not being timed, if you believe it. Okay, if Joe Biden was the nominee, would these have ever come out? No, obviously not. James Comer says, you know what, this is, I think, the biggest political corruption scandal in our history's lifetime. He's a Kentucky Republican. Totally vindicated on all of this. A Burisma official did not respond to a request for comment. The businessman involved in the project said the outreach was undertaken at the request of Burisma. Now, the difficulty of all this is reflected in the emails. Eric Sherwin said, Burisma is hoping that some of its executives can get a meeting with the president to discuss their geothermal business in Tuscany. Wow! Burisma is hoping they can get a meeting with the president, which would have been, at that time, Obama, right? Wow. The ambassador already replied to one letter from Mr. Biden, the Commerce Department official. He may be shopping for more support than he got here, they said. While Mr. Biden's letter to the ambassador is referred to in the correspondence, the Times was unable to review its contents because the State Department appears to have redacted in its entirety. Wow. What a joke of a government. The department cited exemptions allowing the withholding of records for an individual's privacy. In the interview, Mr. Phillips said he did not remember Mr. Biden writing to him about Burisma. He says, I got a lot of letters. He says, if Mr. Biden had written it, I certainly would pay attention to it. Out of courtesy, I'd probably make sure he got a response, but not necessarily from me. And I wouldn't even want to encourage it because I wouldn't get us involved in something like that because it's so inappropriate. He tried to avoid any implication of special treatment. Tuscany is known for access to geothermal power. It's not clear whether the U.S. Embassy went to bat for Burisma or not, but the project fizzled. And so all of it has, of course, now come out. They're busted. The White House got asked about some of this. Would you pardon Hunter? Was one question.
You've said from the podium that President Biden would not pardon his son. If Vice President Harris is elected, would he tell her also to not pardon?
I mean, that's a hypothetical. Look, I could speak for the president, and he said he would not pardon his son, and I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that will change after he gets convicted again. And so the White House is now saying stuff like this, like, no, they never did business together. Remember how this worked? So it was like, oh, he never knew anything. Then he's like, oh, he definitely knew because he was at the meetings. Oh, when he was at the meetings, they didn't discuss it, right? No, they were talking about the weather. And now it's gone to actually they didn't do business together. It's like, well, no, they never signed like a formal contract or anything. So it's like, what's your problem?
The New York Times is reporting that Hunter Biden sought help from a U.S. ambassador on behalf of Burisma while he was on the company's board and while Biden was vice president. So what's Biden's reaction to this, and is he concerned about what this looks like to the American public?
So I'll just report what I've said before, is that the president has never done business with his son, and he was not aware of this. And for anything further, I would have to refer you to Hunter Biden's personal representatives. I can't speak beyond that. But again, I've said this before, the president was not in business with his son, and this is the first time he was not aware of this. And for anything further, you would have to reach out to Hunter Biden.
All right, so that's it. That's what we get. No idea, not aware of anything. And Joe Biden is now also screaming at the press, why don't you write about other things? Okay, C-SPAN was clipping this. Reporter asks about inflation. He says, it's amazing. Shut up. Write about it.
Has the U.S. beat inflation, Mr. President?
Yes. I told you we're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a soft landing. My policies are working. Start writing that way, okay?
And Mr. President,
anyway, thank you.
Yikes. That's Joe Biden. Not real happy about what's happening in the press.